This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I'm your host Gilad Halpern, and every week I'll be engaging in close encounters of the intellectual kind with writers and scholars, or simply people of ideas, of all types and vocations, who have done something to make our lives a tad more interesting. My guest today is an anthropologist and religions scholar, a post-doctoral fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. She recently co-edited a special issue of the journal Israel Studies Review that was dedicated to New Age culture in Israel. Dr. Rachel Werczberger, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hello.
So the New Age revolution is normally described as the revival of spirituality in Western societies against the backdrop of the decline of spirituality and religions and the entrenched secularism and consumerism, some sort of backlash. Now, if you look at it in Israel, it's a very different setting, and I would like to ask you, therefore, how did this New Age turn play out in Israel, which in many respects is a more religious, more traditional society? Was there any need for such backlash?
So first of all, I would like to maybe correct a little bit our concepts. New Age religion or New Age spirituality is perhaps a backlash against both secularization trends and religion, institutionalized religion. So New Agers would define themselves as spiritual but not religious. Some of them would define themselves as acting against consumer culture. Some of them would adopt consumer culture, and these have led to the accusations of the New Age as a consumeristic religion. Mm-hmm. And in Israel, of course, this plays out in a different way, in a slightly different way than in other countries, especially in the Western Europe and the United States, in ways that are similar and are different, because Israel is a little bit different. It's more, as you said, it's more traditional, it's more religious, more Judicized.
Yeah, it's more old age than new age, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's a lot of new stuff in the old age, which is one of the things that makes Israeli New Age so interesting and such a different version of New Age culture than we see in other places. Whereas in Europe and America, we'd find very New Age very, very individual thing. So, and we wouldn't find that many communities or groups or long-lasting groups that are active New Agers. In Israel, we'd find, even beyond the Jewish groups, we'd find more inclination towards grouping and collectives than outside Israel. And of course, the whole playing out with Judaism, with people trying to sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally bring in or adopt some notions of New Age into Jewish worship or thought.
How so? Can you elaborate on this a bit? Because where really do you draw the line between religious spirituality, in this case Judaism, and New Age spirituality? I mean, when you say import New Age concepts into religion, aren't they already there?
Well, it depends how you define New Age components. Because when I say New Age components, I don't mean just using the word spiritual. Because yes, the word spiritual has been used all over throughout the centuries in regard to religion. I mean, spirituality in Christianity and what is spiritual core of Christianity. But what I would think of as New Age concepts and ideas is issues such as the centrality of the self in religious practice or in spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. The idea of an authentic core of the self that is played out either in regard to religious practice or spiritual practice or some kind of ritual, which is not necessarily traditional ritual, but where the self is the center of whatever is going on. I would also, I think this would be the most prominent element of New Age spirituality, in my view. This centrality of the self, of authentic self, of self-development, of self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
So the question would be, how do we get to this?
Was there a space for it in old school Judaism?
You'd find it, well, not articulated as such, but you'd find in Hasidic thought some elements that are psychological. I mean, the whole Hasidic thought was, in a way, a psychologization of Kabbalic thought. So you'd find psychological elements, so it's not surprising that a lot of Jewish groups are adapting Hasidism or are inspired by Hasidism when creating their own sort of New Age Judaism.
Exactly. So would you categorize them under the same banner of Israeli New Age?
Yes.
This neo-Hasidism?
Yeah, definitely. But also, when looking into neo-Hasidism, you find different strands. So you find the more observant, traditional strands of neo-Hasidism that are halachically committed. You'd find them most likely among the national religious, Datim Leumim.
Mm-hmm.
Being inspired by Hasidism, sometimes wearing those long peot, using a lot of music, devotional style, service style, like Karl Bach.
Which is pretty remarkable for modern Orthodox people.
Yes,
right?
it's pretty remarkable when you consider that Karl Bach 20 years ago was very, very marginal in Israel. And even figures like Rabbi Fruman, who is definitely fits this definition of Orthodox Neo-Hasidism, was he was considered very marginal a few years ago, and now he was embraced by the mainstream.
After his death.
After his death. Close to his death, which is also has, it's connected to his political inclinations.
Yeah. Would you say that Judaism and the whole Hasidic strand in it was therefore Judaism more inviting to this kind of New Age trends than other monotheistic and Western religions?
Not at all. I think Judaism is like every other religious resurgence of contemporary era is influence or Jews are being adaptive to what's going on. And if there's a whole ethos of therapeutic discourse and engagement with self-development and well-being.
No, I'll tell you.
Judaism is influenced by that as well.
I'll tell you why I'm asking, because when I think of New Age people in America, for example, the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm speaking as a lay observer, strictly a lay observer, is all sorts of, East Asian kind of spirituality, Buddhism, Hare Krishna, whatever. And in Israel, it's less so. I mean, most of the spirituality, this resurgent religious spirituality is all about going back to Judaism and rediscovering it in another way, but still it's going back to Judaism.
That's a good point, but that's because Judaism has such a central role in Jewish Israeli identity. I mean, being Israeli means partly that you are, or wholly, depends who you ask, that you're Jewish. So to disengage with this Jewish identity, to become wholly Buddhist or Hare Krishna, whatever, that's a very dramatic thing to do for an Israeli person. So there's some studies done on Israeli who are practicing Vipassana, and most of them would be reluctant to regard themselves as Buddhist. They would call themselves Jews who practice Vipassana.
Uh-huh.
And even the notion of Jubus, which is...
What is Jubus?
Jubus are Jewish Buddhists.
Right.
People, usually Americans, who practice both, who both identify as Jews and practice Buddhism, therefore Jubus, it's not that prevalent in Israel. Because people are really, because of the centrality of the ethno-national identity in Israeli discourse, in Israeli...
And that brings us really to the, I wouldn't say the main issue, but an important issue here, which is the political aspects of New Age. We were talking slightly about the social aspects of it. We can go back to it in a second to talk about consumerism and all that. But I would like to ask you about the political aspects, the political dimension of it, because it's not just taking place in a void. There are political ramifications to the fact. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, so there's the prevalent conception in New Age scholarship is that New Age is a very hyper-individualized form of spirituality or religion, and it's that it embraces neoliberal conceptions of an individual and is therefore depoliticized. One of the interesting things in Israel is that it's pretty obvious that New Age cannot be politicized. Being Israel being what it is, you can never really disengage. I mean, you cannot go and live somewhere far away and just say, okay, politics is always relevant, always impacts our way of life. So it's not as depoliticized. And even the more New Agey forms, secular New Agey forms, you'd find some sort of reference to politics of what's going on. There's one of the papers we published in that same issue deals exactly with that, the way even secular New Agers, not the non-Jewish, who are involved in the non-Jewish forms of New Age in Israel, are still hesitant about disengaging from their own political identity as Israelis.
How so? How do you mean reluctant?
Identifying with, I mean, one of the examples, the sociologist Dalit Simchai, who wrote the paper, so one of the examples Dalit gives in her papers are discussions of New Agers following one of the wars. I think it's the Second Lebanon War.
Uh-huh.
And the way people are still identify with the country in discussing those issues, in the way they place themselves in opposition to other groups, collectives, nations, as Israelis, Jewish Israelis.
Mm-hmm. No, the thing is that opting for a New Age lifestyle often comes as some sort of backlash, as this need to disengage. If that's not the case here in Israel, in that case in particular, so what is really the motivation of those people to look for an alternative lifestyle?
Well, I wouldn't, as a religion scholar, I wouldn't call it only as a lifestyle. I mean, for me, New Age and New Age Judaism, it's not a matter of only a lifestyle choice. It's a matter of religious belief. And these people are really looking for belief, but they are more even than that. They're looking for an experience, a religious, spiritual experience, an unmediated, direct experience of the sacred. And this is not available around them, not for Orthodox mainstream Jewish people and definitely not for secular people. And they find it elsewhere. They find it in those New Agey forms of Jewish and non-Jewish spirituality. So this would be the main thing that they're looking for. Around this core of search are the lifestyle issues and the ideological issues and the political issues. But at least in my view, I see this as a sincere spiritual search by these people of looking for some sort of experience that is not available elsewhere for them.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that therefore these trends have contributed somewhat to the development of Judaism per se? I mean, is it really another chapter? I mean, I'm sure that Hasidism early on was looked down upon in the same way that many people look down on New Ageism today, and yet in retrospect, with the benefit of hindsight, we know to what extent it did change the course of the evolution of Judaism. Do you think, well, it's too soon to tell probably, but do you think that there are signs that New Ageism would have a similar or a parallel impact on the evolution of Judaism?
Well, it depends which form of New Age Judaism, because the forms I studied, which are the non-Orthodox, non-observant forms, are relatively small, marginal in Israel. In North America, they're bigger. I'm not sure how influential they are. There are some discussions of that as being the next stage of American Judaism, especially because it's non-denominational. So it kind of crosses the boundaries between the traditional boundaries between American denominations, between liberal, progressive, Orthodox. That would be North America. In Israel, I guess these forms are not so strong. The neo-Hasidic ones, yeah, I mean, they are, and I think they are changing Judaism because of their political aspects. I mean, that's...
Political in what sense?
Well, some of the people who are notoriously known as a hilltop youth and Noar Gvot are kind of neo-Hasidic in their own way. Mm-hmm. And they're influenced by neo-Hasidic rabbi like Rav Ginsburg, for instance. And yes, these people are changing Judaism and changing the way at least some Jews...
Definitely changing more than Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Or religious...
Yeah, definitely. They're taking
Zionism.
They are moving national religious Zionism to the right, to more radical view, a more mystically radical view of land of Israel. And I wouldn't say they embrace New Age concepts, but if you look at, again, one of the papers we published is written by Asaf Tamari, and it's on Rav Ginsburg and the way he engages with the concept of change of consciousness. So yes, these figures and these people are changing Judaism in some way, if this will prevail for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that leads me to my next question, which will probably be the last one. Is New Ageism in Israel here to stay, or is it just a fad that we can expect to disappear?
I think it's here to stay for a while. I think it's here to stay as long as it stays globally. I mean, in this sense, it's a part of a global phenomenon. And as long as
You wouldn't say that it's on the decline elsewhere?
New Age is the result of global trends that are happening all over the globe. Globalization, neoliberalization, the growth in therapeutic discourse, a lot of other things. And it's a result, and the things, if the structure is not changing, I don't see any reason to believe that the thing itself will change or will be in decline. Mm-hmm. If people are looking for embodied experience, personal, private, individualized spiritual experiences, embodied or emotive, and they're looking for it everywhere, not only in New Age religion. I mean, part of Pentecostal Christianity is also exactly about this kind of experiences. Sure. And so I don't see any reason to believe that this inclination will be in decline in the future, in the near future. What will happen in 100 years? I mean...
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
It gives us something to look forward to. But we'll have to leave it there. Dr. Rachel Werczberger, an anthropologist and religion scholar, a post-doctoral fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us today about the New Age culture in Israel.
Thank you.
And also big thanks to Alex Benish, the technical producer, and to the Van Leer Institute for their generous support. If you like this podcast, there are many more where it came from. Just go to www.tlv1.fm/podcasts and take your pick.
משפחה שלך